Behind me are two art booth display walls. One costs $65 and the other one $332. And I'd just like to ask you, from the video, can you tell the difference between which wall is the more expensive one and which wall is the cheaper one? I know if I was you watching this, I wouldn't be able to. And if I was a customer standing outside the booth looking in, both walls would look amazing. So the real question here is, should artists use this more affordable wall? And that's what I'm going to show you here in this video today. We're going to go over both different types of walls. I'm going to compare the pros and cons of each one and show you some really special things that I learned to do to the cheaper wall to make it function much more like the professional wall. This is the $65 wall. It is a mesh tarp. As you can see, I've used bungee balls to connect it to the top of my tent. I also connected it to the side poles with bungee balls. You can see those here. And how I hang the work, I'm going to show you the back here, is with these. They are called drapery hooks. Now, I didn't hang my heaviest work. To be honest, I was a little bit nervous about this cheap wall and whether it was going to hold up. So I hung more of my smaller pieces and some medium-sized pieces. And that's what I would suggest. If you're going to go with the cheaper wall, don't use this wall if you have a really heavy artworks that you're going to hang on it. Something that's a couple of pounds will be fine. But if it's 10, 15, 20 pounds, I would not go with this wall. You see what happens when I pull this off of here? This is a little bit of a heavier one. It's not super heavy, but I don't know, maybe weighs a pound or two. And you pull this off, you can see that there's a little bit of a mark left here in the wall from where I had this hanging, right? And if it was really heavy, it's going to stretch more. I mean, I'm pulling on this is a really nice firm amount of pulling, and it's not coming loose or anything, but it does leave this mark there, and that makes me think that it might not be able to hold something really, really heavy. But it's holding what I'm hanging on it up here just fine, and I would be able to use these for most of the art fairs I do because I don't hang really super heavy items. These tarps are available on Amazon. I've linked them in the description. I've also linked the hangers that you need for them in the description. Now moving on to the professional wall. These are amazing. I've used this particular wall for a decade and it has never worn out, still going strong. And what's different about these than the wall that I just showed you is these connect to the top of your Easy Up with these nice little clips. And when they're buckled up there like that, it is super secure. So if there's high winds, you don't have to worry about this ever coming loose. When doing an outdoor art fair, that's what you got to think about. High winds, lots of bad weather, because it happens. And they connect to the poles with Velcro. It's kind of hard to see the pole because I have everything attached in here, but you can see the bungee balls are connecting the cheaper wall, and then the Velcro is connecting the more expensive wall. And the grid on the more expensive wall is a little bit bigger. You can see, so this way you can use two different types of hangers. I'm going to show you the other hanger here in just a second. But before that, I want to show you the grid pattern on this one. You see how it's a lot more tightly woven? Now, this will probably help it to hold up considering it's a cheaper material. And you can tell it's a lighter weight weave than the more expensive wall. So it's probably good that it's woven like this, but that's why you have to use the drapery hooks. You can't use S hooks. I have an S hook holding one of these pieces up right here. You can see it. And we just put it right in there. Hangs it up on there. The mesh panel walls, you can also use the drapery hooks. It's whichever you prefer. One of the great things about these mesh panel walls is that you can hang really heavy artworks. I've personally hung artworks that weigh 10 or 15 pounds from these all day long, day after day at art fairs, and never had any problem with them. So if you're trying to hang really heavy works, you definitely want to upgrade to the Pro setup. Today we've got about 5 to 10 mile-an-hour winds, and you can see neither of these walls are moving much. But what I'm going to do is really move them a lot, like ripple them up to make it simulate a lot of high winds to see if the artwork stays up. And I guess I'm just going to sacrifice my pieces if some of them fall off this cheap wall. I don't know. I know this wall can handle it. I mean, it'd have to be 40-mile-an-hour wind to do something like that. I guess let's try this one. I need all this stuff for an art show coming up, so I'm really hoping that none of it falls off. It worked. So in my opinion, this wall would make it through high winds and it's in really good shape. But one of the reasons why I think it is actually working out better than it would be just the tarp hanging up there is that we connected this to something called a stay bar. Now, stay bars, if you notice on the more expensive walls over here, they come with these bars that you put across the bottom of your Easy Up, and then they are buckled down here, right? And this gives it a lot of stability. So what we did was connect a stay bar to the bottom of these. To add the extra stay bars, it costs about $75 per wall. So if you've already got the $65 for the tarp, adding on the $75, you're still coming in at less than half of what it would cost to do an entire booth with the more expensive walls. I've put links to the stay bars and the better panels in the description of this video as well. One other tip is if you are hanging something bigger like this piece here, you can use 2 hooks to help displace the weight. And that's what I would suggest on either wall. Also, if you look up at the corner here, you can see how we did the bungee balls on the corner specifically. We used one on the back and then one on the side. You can see they're both connected there. This allowed it to pull more tightly across, because one of the things that gives this whole wall stability is how tightly stretched it is. And that's why adding the stay bar and having everything pulled as tight as you possibly can is going to help this, because the tighter it is, the less it will move. The more it can move, the more something could come off the wall, even though it hasn't. But you really don't want your stuff, if the winds are, let's say, 40 miles an hour, you don't want it whipping back and forth like that the whole show. I mean, a lot of times they will, even these more expensive walls will. But if you can get everything tightened up as much as possible, that's what you want to do. Now, it all can't be perfect when it comes to the cheaper walls. And here's the one thing that I came across that I really didn't like, and it was setup time. It is really hard on your fingers to wrap all of these bungee balls around here everywhere. There are lots of grommets you got to feed the bungee balls through. You got to stretch it around all the different parts to your tent. And it takes a long time. It took us about 5 times as long to set up this cheaper wall than it did the more expensive one. That said, the cheaper wall definitely is a good value. If you want to save some money, it's surprisingly sturdy. If you'd like to learn more art fair tips, check out this video. All right, thank you so much for watching. See you next time.